Hello and thanks for joining us for another episode of Studio Tech Live. This is episode number 153, recorded on the 9th of September 2014. And if you're watching this live, well done. Apparently some other company has got some announcement event happening in Cupertino or somewhere like that. And some of our audience are a little bit distracted by that. I know Vance is. So if you see him glancing away, you know what he's up to. Anyway, we've got a pretty busy show this evening. We're going to be having a quick look at IBC, which starts this Friday. Unfortunately, we're not going to be there, but a lot of the Studio Tech community are, and hopefully they're going to be sharing comments, pictures, and maybe video clips with us. And we'll share those with you over the weekend, perhaps, or at least on next week's show. We're then going to be talking about the S word, yes, Skype. Now, we're pretty lucky in that we have some Skype TX systems on that we're testing as part of the Skype TAP program. But other people are having problems with Skype because the latest versions, which you now have to use because they're turning off support for the old versions, don't allow you to easily get video into them. So what can you do about it? Well, we're going to be talking to Stephen Pressland about some solutions that he's found. And then we're going to be taking another look at the Blackmagic Studio camera. We looked at this a couple of weeks ago, but we're now going to see it linked up to the 8M control software, which allows you to control it and make adjustments from the control panel rather than from the camera. So that's it, a busy show today. Now, we can bring you Studio Tech Live thanks to the support we get from several companies. And we just like to take a minute to thank them. First of all, I'd like to thank Teradek. Teradek products are, without Teradek products, it would be very difficult for us to do Studio Tech Live in the way we do it. The UK and US studios are linked 24/7 by Teradek cubes. We use Teradek Bond for near zero latency remote camera connections. We're using Teradek clips on UAVs or for things like remote monitoring of DSLRs. And over the last few months, we've been using the Teradek Bond 2. This box is now part of our equipment arsenal. And the Bond 2 allows you to bond cellular modems, 3G and 4G modems, to get a video back from a remote location. And we're going to be using that and sharing that with you over the next few weeks. So all in all, we really are connected by Teradek. Our thanks to them for their support. Now, the bit of equipment that is the heart of the UK and US studios is a NewTek TriCaster. And the TriCaster is not just a switcher. It allows you to stream, it allows you to record, it allows you to play back videos. It allows you to do lower thirds. You can do animated graphics, bugs on some of the professional models. Without the TriCaster, it would make our job a lot harder here at Studio Tech TV. So we'd like to thank NewTek for their continued support of Studio Tech Live. And finally, I want to thank BitGravity. BitGravity provide us the bandwidth to stream Studio Tech Live each and every week. BitGravity provides the bandwidth for all the TTFN TV live streams. We continue to receive very positive comments on the quality of the live video, and this combined with outstanding service and support makes BitGravity a great company to work with. So if you're looking for someone to help with your live streaming requirements, check BitGravity out at www.bitgravity.com. Hello and welcome again. A very busy show, so let's get right into it. But just want to remind you about a couple of things before we do that. And the first is that our website that allows you to sell bits of kit or to find bits of video kit. And that's ads.studiotech.tv. And you can register on that site. It's free of charge. We don't make any money out of it. It's been a little bit quiet recently, but a lot of people have sold equipment through it. So it is well worth checking out. And it's also well worth listing items for sale because people who watch the show are interested in bits of video equipment. And here on the laptop screen, I'm just showing the site. And you can see there's a complete studio setup. There's a Blackmagic Design Ultra Studio, there's a Matrox MX02. There's just 3 items at the moment, because a lot of them has dropped off or been sold. So if you have any items that you want to sell, you need to register. There's a little code down here, the registration code, and just enter your items. It really does work. We've sold quite a lot through it. We also want to remind people about our Patreon site. Over the last few years, people have said, how can we support you? You know, have you got a donations button? And we haven't really done much about that. So after several viewers suggested, why not get a Patreon site? That's exactly what we have done. And you can find it by following this link here. What Patreon is just a way that you can, say, pay us $5 a month or $10 a month or whatever. We have several people who are being very generous indeed, but not a lot of people have signed up to it, which is surprising. So, if you get some value out of watching this show, why don't you just donate $5 a month or whatever, just to help us with the running costs? Because even with our advertisers, this isn't a show that makes any money for anybody who's involved in it. I can assure you of that. So we'd appreciate any support that you might like to give us. All right, let's get on with the show. Lots to do, lots of people to talk to. And the first person to talk to is the man who is back behind the glass, the man who is back in the studio after being absent with leave last week. And that is Peter. Peter, thanks for joining us again this week.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's nice to be back. See, I forgot where all the buttons are, the mute button. But yes, nice to be back. And no, nothing much has changed apart from my memory, obviously, and a few buttons to press. So anyway, without more ado, I see in the show notes that we go back to our other long-time regular. Nice to see you again, Mr. Willis.
Certainly. Glad to be here as always, and I'm going to try to remember my mute switch. It's very tough to remember sometimes. So, chat room, we had someone ask if we were actually going to sell Peter there on the ads.studiotech.tv, and not yet. So he's not available for sale yet. So you will not find him in the ads section. At least not yet.
Yeah, I'm not sure that we would actually get very much for him. This is the problem, Vance.
Well, see, you can say that, Mark, but see, I mean, you've got a bulletproof glass or something between,
just
you
as
and Peter.
Just as well. Yes.
I have the mute buttons.
But Peter has a button. Yes, he has mute button and a button he can press, and my video just starts getting all snowy and everything. So I was going to be easy on what I said, but he may be tossing something through the studio window.
I have this button marked black.
All right. Anyway, Vance, great to see you. We haven't actually talked very much. Normally, we talk almost every day from the studios, but I've been out working on a project almost every day for the last couple of weeks, and we'll continue to do that for a little while. So it's good to see you. Right, but let's get in the show. So we normally cover news. That's not going to take too long this evening, Vance, is it?
Well, we've got, Mark, we talked a little bit about, we got just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of press releases from IBC, which starts in just a few days. We've had some of the chat room members actually drive by the convention center there and said the banners are all plastered over with, with all kinds of tarps and plastic and things, that, so you can't see what's going on. So the big unveiling is in a couple of days. And unfortunately, as you mentioned in the beginning of the show, we're not going to be there, but a number of the Studio Tech audience will be. So we are looking forward to getting that. Our chat room stays open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And at different hours and times of the day, we do check back in and monitor the chat room. So anyone that would like to sign in, check things out, drop back out, come back in again, then that would be really, really good. So we're looking forward to a lot of the things. I think, Mark, I don't know what your opinion was, but a lot of things seem to be, I think you said it earlier, revolutionary or, space aged or, out of this world or something to that effect. So, but on the flip side, I haven't seen a whole lot yet because I think everything's being kept under wraps and we'll see it in a few days. What do you think?
I'm not sure there's going to be anything really exciting. I mean, they get me every time. There's this press release that comes up and says, so and so is now at the European teleport facility. Teleport to me means beam me up, Scotty. It means something exciting. But apparently, it's just some satellite uplink facility and it's not really a teleport facility at all. Now, as you said, somebody did say that there are some banners up around IBC that are still covered up, so maybe there will be a few announcements. We haven't heard very much. We know that Skype TX says they've got something exciting to talk about. There's, Sony have got a big press conference. Now, the Sony press conference is actually being streamed live, and more companies are now starting to do this. In fact, and I'm sure Vance will talk about it in a minute, we've just been watching the Apple keynote with some announcement in Cupertino that Vance has been following, and we'll get a quick update from him in a minute on that. But not only are they now live streaming it, but they're effectively blogging it themselves. And I think doing a better job than a lot of the bloggers that are there, because they had all the images, they had the video clips, they had the quotes all ready to blog. So Sony are streaming their press conference live. And I have actually retweeted that at TTFN TV. So if you want to catch up with anything exciting that's happened, do make sure you're following at Vance Willis or me at TTFN TV. And when we come across something, we will tweet it. And that way you can follow the link or find out what is happening. Now, there is one announcement or one release, because it was announced at last year's IBC. And Vance, I know, is waiting for this, as we have mentioned before. So Vance, will we 1 year later get that software from Blackmagic for the Video Hub?
Well, I started holding my breath, and I did it for first an hour, and then a week, and then a month, and then half a year, and then a year, and I said after about a year and a half, I'm just going to stop even looking for it. So if it ever does come available, we've seen we've seen it kind of on a computer maybe somewhere, but I don't know when it's going to come out, Mark. So I would love to see it this year. It's become a little bit more of a joke with us just because they teased us with it a long time ago and just shelved it or put it on the side of a desk and didn't get it out into the public. So I'm really looking forward to that happening, as I have been. But my hopes for the Video Hub software are way on the back burner right this minute. So maybe, but I don't know. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't see it, to be honest with you.
So this is for everybody, every member of the Studio Tech community who might be going to IBC. Go to the Blackmagic stand. Go down. Normally on the left-hand side of the stand, they have the video hubs. Find a Blackmagic person and says, hey, at last year's IBC, you showed a new release of video software, of Video Hub software that allowed you to load and save settings. Has it been released yet? And if they get enough people, maybe that'll have some effect, because it would be so useful for us. I mean, I know it's just a little utility and not everybody has video hubs, but if you did, you would know how useful it would be. So we'll keep you updated on IBC. And obviously on next week's show, we have a couple of people who are who have said they're going to send us video clips. If you're going to be there, do take some still images or video clips and send in a little report, and we'll share them on next week's show. Right, before we move on to talking about the S word, I wanted to mention a couple of things. You remember we showed a short, 10-minute video of Richard Payne from Holden a few weeks ago about the Panasonic GH4. And we filmed shot the same day, a much longer review. It's about 40 minutes long. And hopefully that'll be released in the next couple of days. In fact, I was looking at it earlier today, and it is, I actually sat back and I was watching it more than I was editing it. It really is an amazing camera. So that'll be Studio Tech 115, and hopefully it'll be out in the next couple of days, certainly in time for the weekend. So keep an eye out for that. And I also wanted just to remind people, because this show, we have pre-show, we have post-show, we have various items, and lots of people have asked us for an index. Well, if you go to the studiotech.tv website, so I've got it on my laptop screen now, and if you actually click on one of the Studio Tech Live episodes, you will go to it, and you'll see that there are two videos. There's The first one is where it just says video at the top. That's just the show. That is, from the opening titles to the closing titles. And then we have video with pre-show and post-show. And as you can see, the YouTube algorithm for selecting the worst possible thumbnail of Vance worked very well in this particular case. I think we probably could get
easy now. Easy now.
But below that, the bit I wanted to point out, and it is in sort of a faint text, is an index. And if you click on any of these, it takes you to the particular. So you've got 3D Storm, TriCaster portfolio, the PTZ. That's the PTC 120. This is from Data Video. We're really looking forward to getting our hands on that camera. So if you click on it, it just takes you to the YouTube video in that point. So there is an index on the website, and we'd very much like to thank Jesper, for one of the Studio Tech community, who every week for the last 3 or 4 months, if maybe longer, has been sending the index into us, normally within a couple of days. Sometimes if he's busy or away on holiday, it takes a little bit longer, but that index is posted, and I know that might help some people just on going straight to the bit of the show that they really want to watch. But of course, you should be watching all of it. So do check that out. Now, let's talk about the S word. I think we're bringing in our guest in just a moment, but let's just set the scene. Skype have been, I don't know, sunsetting might be the right word for it. Older versions of Skype, and if you try and log into it, in fact, it happened to us today when we were doing some testing earlier. Peter tried to sign in to an old version of Skype, and it wouldn't sign in. You had no luck, Peter, didn't you? It was absolutely, there was just nothing you could do with it.
Absolutely nothing. Just didn't get past the login screen.
Yeah. And that's because you can't actually log into these older versions. Now, Skype have been good. They are sending out emails. This is an email that I actually received this morning. This is first for one of for our Skype 4 ID. And it says, we're now retiring older versions, and it appears that at some point you signed into Skype with one of them. To continue signing into Skype, you'll need to download the latest version and then send you the link. So this is a link that lots of people are getting. And for most users, that is absolutely fine. But if you are using Skype in a podcast or a show or a broadcast of some sort, you want to be able to send video into Skype and not just with a webcam. And a lot of the devices that we have used, such as a Blackmagic devices, we've used the Ultra Studio mini recorder. That was our setup of choice. That no longer works. So people have become frustrated and have been asking us, well, are there any solutions? So with that, I'm going to introduce somebody who's been on the show, I think, at least a couple of times before, the guy who's responsible for the back end of many of our online systems, and that's Stephen Preston. Stephen, thanks very much for joining.
Hi, nice to see you. Thanks for having me on again.
You're very welcome. So Stephen, you have kindly done some testing for us and with us, and we're actually connected over Skype. Now we're using Skype TX system this end, but we did exactly the same tests earlier with a standard Skype system, except of course you couldn't see our video. But you're now coming full screen to us, widescreen over Skype, and I assume that I know this isn't a webcam you're using.
No, so what we're using here is a Blackmagic ATEM television studio. If I just cut to that, you see that we've got a sort of a fairly rudimentary setup with similar to some of the ones you've been sending in, with a couple of dual screens and a ATEM television studio, Ultra Studio 4K and a Behringer Ultra Curve, and very basic setup. But we've got the television studio feeding in from a couple of Sony video cameras, and that is then being sent out to a Mac MacBook Pro Retina over USB 3 with the Magwell device, and that's being fed by a HDMI input. So I've got a picture here of the little device there that comes in two versions, the HDMI and the SDI. Personally, I've just got the HDMI version because it gives me a bit more flexibility with my HDMI cameras if I don't want to do it with the studio, the mixer setup. But yeah, so that's the setup that's sending you over the latest version of Skype for Mac.
So you're using, I think, 6.19 build 452, which is today's build. In fact, we joked earlier. I said, are you using the latest version? You said, yeah, I've got the latest version. Of course, you check and there's another little tweak, and so you upgraded to the latest version. So this is output from your television studio into the Magewell capture dongle, which basically they say is plug and play. I assume it must appear to the operating system. Now, this is on Mac, you're on OS X, but we believe it works on Windows. It is on Mac. Just make sure I've got that right.
Yeah, so it's on Mac, and the device is plug and play. There's no drivers, no software. What it does is it's using the standard USB video device format that a standard webcam would use. But obviously, rather than it sending in a picture that's come off of a tiny little sensor, we're getting a picture that's coming through from the HD television studio through the HDMI. So the benefit of that is that from Skype's point of view, it just thinks it's an external webcam, and it's also got a few other neat little tricks that help the Skype system get what it asks for. So with a webcam, they are asking for a particular resolution and frame rate. The Magewell dongle has actually got a transcoder in it, so it's doing all of the scaling and the frame rate conversions in the unit itself. And I've had a play around with that, and it's actually very, very clever. So where I've used it on a MacBook Air, which is very low CPU. It's not low CPU, but for heavy video crunching and scaling and deinterlacing, it will go sort of through the roof on CPU power if I'm using, say, a Blackmagic mini recorder. But when I'm using this device, there's all the hard work's being done on the device, so it's only then leaving the computer up to doing the video compression for the process. So very good little bit of kit. The trouble with there not being drivers, your software is in complete control of it. The only way that I've been able to use it and actually have control over picture size, frame rates, is to write some custom software and to use some software that gives me direct access to the system. But apart from that, you plug it into Skype. It says what it wants out the device gives it to it, and it works. As we can see here, it's there's no XML hacks, there's no nothing. Fresh install of Skype, latest version, just working out the box.
All right, so we got a couple of questions that come in, and we've shown these devices a couple times. Rob is asking, is this USB 2 or 3? Natively, it's USB 3. We can see it's a blue cable, which doesn't always indicate, but a lot of times the internals inside of the USB actually, if it's blue, it tells you it's a 3. This does down convert to USB 2, but you do lose some of the actual frame rate and resolution sizes, Rob. This is also an HDMI version. I'll have a couple of SDIs and an HDMI. I've gotten mixed results with this here in the US, guys. We've got we've got this 5994 frame rate and just some crazy stuff. I've not tried it on the latest and greatest version of Skype. I got just a little, tired of this. I got like 4 of those emails from Skype saying, your current version of Skype doesn't work. Get ready because you're going to have to get the newest version. And, I have not tried this as of, the last week or so to see how it works here in the U.S. Rob, you can search on Magewell. It's Magewell. It's distributed here in the U.S. by about 3 distributors, and they're little expensive devices, but they do work great for exactly what Stephen was talking about. That it does a lot of the heavy work off of the computer's control card, so you don't have to do a whole lot. But I've gotten some mixed results. I'll say both on Windows and Mac here in the U.S. So you guys have it a little easier, I believe, there in Europe with your just having to worry about the 50 cycles and not the 60 coming from computers that we do in the 5994 coming from video sources, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So we'll try to do some more testing in the upcoming days and weeks and let you know how that's working with the new Skype stuff. So, Mark, did you have anything to add to these to these comments about the Magewell? How much have you played around with? I know that you had it working on a Mac Mini, and it just worked, right?
No, I had the Magewell kindly lent to me by the UK distributor, and it didn't work at all. And I was in one of those very rushed days, plugged it in, and it didn't work. Now, Stephen, you said that you thought it was a little bit sensitive, and sometimes you had to install things in the right order. And I was wondering if that was the problem that I had with it.
Right. So I don't know. When I'm using it with a Retina MacBook Pro, the second generation of those. So it's a couple of years old, or a year and a half old, and that has an issue where when I plug it in, I will get a distorted picture, and I'll get sort of random lines sort of out of sync, and things will be misplaced. I was all prepared to send it back as being faulty. Plugged it to my MacBook Air just to see if it worked, which is only USB 2 because it's an older version. Worked fine, be it with the reduced frame rates. So I was all set to send it back, but I thought I'd send off an email to Magewell in China, and sent them an email. Was saying, look, this is the issue we've got. I sort of managed to capture a picture of it and send it to them, and waited. At the same time, I rebooted my MacBook from scratch and plugged it all in, and it started working. So I was thinking, what's going on? It was fine. Tried it a couple of other times and had the issue. Closed all the load of programs down, plugged it in, worked fine. I then got an email back from Magewell saying that there was a known issue to do with sort of the compatibility with the motherboard and the USB drivers within the MacBook. Whether that's just this version of the MacBook or whether it's widespread, I don't know. They didn't go into detail. But they said there is a firmware fix for it. The issue being that the firmware fix reduces the available bandwidth down from 350 megabytes a second to 200 and something megabytes a second. So I've gone back to them and said, okay, great, can you send me that? But can you also let me know what frame rates that limits me to, and picture sizes, because this does go up to full 1080p 60 frames. So I expect that probably it's going to be fine for everything I need to use it for, because I'm only using it for, sort of 25, 30 frames, whatever Skype's asking it for. So, issue there. I've not had a response back from them yet. I only sent them that email today, but hopefully we'll get some view, and then if that firmware is available, it'll probably be something that users will maybe want to try. There's no word as to when that's going to be released publicly, sort of on their website. There's no word or anything on there for the download. So we'll see. But yeah, there is an issue. But even today, switching it on, I just closed all the programs down, plugged it in, opened the Skype and opened the other programs, and it worked fine without any issue.
So a couple of questions in the chat room. People are saying, why not use the Blackmagic Device Ultra Studio mini recorder? Well, that's what we used to do. They no longer work in the latest versions of Skype, and Skype is switching off, sunsetting those versions. So you have to use the latest version. So that's why we're talking about this Magewell device. So
Mark, sorry, just to cut in there. that was the reason I bought the Magewell, was that I couldn't get the Blackmagic devices to work in the recent versions of Skype.
Right. Yeah.
Until I got the Magewell device, and as of in the last couple of weeks, the Blackmagic Ultra Studio 4K. I've not tried the mini recorder. The 4K is working and being picked up correctly now. I don't know whether that's Skype have fixed something, Blackmagic have fixed something in their drivers, but that is working. And I sent you a picture earlier that was coming through the Ultra Studio 4K. And it was working, but I think that the issue with the Blackmagic stuff is that it's more temperamental because of the fact that there are intermediate drivers and it's not using that native webcam class. So this Magewell device should work better because, for all intents and purposes, Skype just thinks it's a webcam. But who knows how that will progress in the future.
Okay, now there's one thing that people should realise is when you first do it, the Magewell has this thing where it squashes the picture. Now, I think if you switch your cameras, can we actually demonstrate that, Stephen? Or
so let's see whether this works. So I'm going to try. We did this earlier. It didn't seem to cause any problems. So I'm going to switch to the Blackmagic output. So you should now be receiving me over the Blackmagic.
No, we're just waiting
device.
for the holding screen has come up, so we'll see this. Obviously, now we're using Skype TX. It has some more sophisticated bits and pieces.
Yeah, so I'm sending you the Blackmagic device now, and it's sending you a square cropped picture. I don't know if you're receiving that yet.
Which we're not seeing at the moment. So looks like we have lost. It says video not started. It says.
Right. Okay. So that might be that the Skype TX has got an issue, but it did work on your standard version of Skype.
Yeah.
So let me switch back to the other one and see.
There we are. So there we go. So it's just. So that's what happens first when you come up. So Magewell squashes it, and people might, if they're not patient, they're going to think, oh, it's not working properly.
And also, if you've got bandwidth issues, so. You're going to have that issue if you stay in standard definition. Obviously, as soon as it's got enough bandwidth to jump up to HD, it's going to send you the right aspect ratio. So that's just, the nature of the device has not got cropping. It's just going to squash the image to the aspect ratio, and you'd be expected to stretch it out at in the capture stage. But yeah, that is a nuance of it if you've got low bandwidth.
So that's well worth people understanding that. So if they see that, just give it 20 seconds, 30 seconds. As long as you've got the bandwidth, it should pop to 16.9. So that's the Magewell is one solution, and the other solution that we used earlier is the Blackmagic Ultra Studio 4K. Did you say?
Yeah. So the Ultra Studio 4K was what was using what we tried to switch to just then, but that obviously didn't work there with TX. Maybe that if we started the call with it, it'd be all right. We'll have to try that, but it certainly worked earlier with your Mac Mini or sort of whatever iMac or whatever it was that
Mac
you
Mini,
were receiving. Mac Mini. So and the issue that I'd had before is that it wouldn't jump up to HD. It would only stay in the square SD 480 lines video. Obviously now it's jumped up to 720, so that was working when we tried it earlier. But I think it's one of those ones where the Blackmagic continues to be temperamental. Perhaps it's working a bit better than it was, but at least it might be squashing perhaps some of the conspiracy theories that Skype would actively doing something wrong. Having done a lot of work with the Blackmagic drivers and the video encoding, particularly on the Mac, on some projects that they've been working on, there are some particular nuances to the way that it works, particularly with frame rates and what it's asking for and what it's getting. And I suspect it's probably that they're not testing their code specifically for those use cases, which is something that you wouldn't expect them to do, because there are nuances to the fact that the television studio is a fixed output. We're talking about fixed frame rates. It's not just going to switch on the fly to whatever the drivers are asking for. So so there are some issues there. I think it's probably just more to do with that than anything.
I'm just checking the Skype TX info here, and it does say, yeah, we are getting 1280 by 720, so it is a full, HD, or not full HD, an HD picture, 1280 by 720, 720p picture from you, and it's handling it well. So there are then potentially a couple of solutions. I think the Magewell might be the obvious one. Again, people in the chat room have been saying WebRTC. Well, WebRTC is something to look at, but we have not yet seen a really reliable solution. Vance and I, when was it, Vance? We did try WebRTC. It probably, to be fair, it probably was 6 months, 9 months ago, maybe even a year ago, and it was not delivering the quality or the latency that we needed.
Well, the latency was okay, Mark, and the audio was fine. The video is still they're still kind of working some of the details out, but I do believe that the WebRTC is going to be the next train coming down the track for sure. We got a couple of links there with some experiments going on in the chat room. So the whole Skype thing, without getting on top of a soapbox and talking about it, it's I think it's, to a lot of folks, it's frustrating. Mark, think about the average consumer that would go out and buy either hundreds of dollars or pounds worth of equipment to get a task done, and everything works fine, and then all of a sudden, one Tuesday afternoon or Friday afternoon or something, there's an update and things don't work the way they did before. And we've been through many years, at least 2.5, 3 years of problem solving this issue to try to get to the end game of using Skype. And I'm really glad that the Magewell is continuing to work. And there's some other folks. There was a Dazzle comment in the chat room, which I kind of chuckled at, because Dazzle was a great capture device. It was just standard definition, and works great for a number of folks. But deep down inside, I just question some of the decisions that let's just chop everyone's different versions off and scramble to make things work. I really think, Mark, just personally, that it would push the WebRTC development and other technologies to find a way, not to circumvent, but just to find a better wheel to roll, if you will. So that's just kind of without giving my long-winded opinion that I normally do. I'm just a little disappointed. I'll be honest with you. I really am.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand that. I mean, it does seem, especially when the Skype TX systems aren't generally available, it does seem a little bit changed. But I have to say, apart from an issue we had today with Skype TX, which was just a Microsoft update, so when we applied all the updates, everything worked. The Skype TX systems, they just work, which is, I think, is your point, Vance, is you want something to just work. And what we were having to do with Skype, as you know, I mean, when we got your systems working, you never turn them off, because if things weren't powered up in the right order, etc., there was a problem. But there is be interesting to see how Skype develops, how Skype TX develops, and maybe they'll have something interesting to say at IBC. We'll wait and see. So I think I want to thank Stephen for joining us and taking us through those options. And perhaps, Stephen, I can ask you just one last question. And I didn't mention this earlier. I know that a lot of people are waiting for version 1.1 of the Studio Tech TV app. I think it's been submitted, has it, or are we still waiting to hear back from Apple?
It was submitted last Monday. It's usually about a week for the app to go into review. I'm just checking my phone. No, we've not got any notifications to say it's gone into review. I suspect some of the guys at Apple are probably a little bit busy watching a video to be reviewing apps. It should be any day, so I don't know when it's going to go into review, but usually once it goes into review, it's sort of live within a couple of hours. So hopefully in the next day or so we should get that pushed out to the users, and they'll see an update, and that will add the MP3 download functionality and a few other bug fixes and some of the stuff that you demoed a few weeks ago. But yeah, it's with Apple. We're just waiting for them to sign it off, and then should see it in the App Store.
All right, great. Anyway, Stephen, thanks very much for joining, and no doubt we'll see you again soon when we're talking about Skype or other interesting developments in that area, or when we're talking about our back-end systems. In fact, Stephen and I are sort of talking about a secret project, which we hope it won't be too long before we can discuss with the wider audience. So Stephen, thanks again, and we'll see you soon.
Oh, thank you for having me, and it's great to bring some information and be able to test this for the viewers. So thank you very much.
All right, thanks to Stephen Preston. You can find him at Vision Maker UK. All right, so we've mentioned and we sort of this event that was happening in Cupertino. So Vance was watching it avidly. Without going into all the details, Vance, and perhaps focusing more on the video-related things, was anything interesting announced today by Apple?
Well, they're still finishing it up, I think, with some rock band or something called U2. I don't know. They must not have been doing anything today, so they're on stage or something. But anyway, so yeah, really quickly, I mean, everyone knows that we're somewhat, some folks would call us Apple fanboys. We enjoy the whole ecosystem of Apple just because, unlike some things in the Microsoft world, and we talked about Skype and some Microsoft updates that just made things stop working, and on and on and on. We do get some of that on the Apple side, but there are a number of things that frustrate people but work. Anyway, so the keynote today released 2 new iPhones and also an iWatch that has all kinds of sensors in it. Touch sensors. On the video side, the larger one, which is the iPhone 6 Plus, has some pretty neat video options with stabilization of the camera. They're essentially in the keynote. They says, you can take your parents' camcorder and throw it out the window. The interesting thing, I don't know exactly which one it was. I caught it just in a flash as we were setting up for the show. Was it looked to be a pretty new version of a consumer camcorder. It wasn't a piece of junk that may have had a VHS tape or Sony Betamax or something that would have been 30, 40 years old. It was not that old of a camcorder. So obviously a lot of folks are using cellular phones as their primary selfie camera, their picture-taking camera, their video camera. So there's some slow-mo stuff coming out now, 120 frames, 240 frames, which I tend to like the 240 frames better. High-definition screen on the large one, so now you're going to a full 1080p on the iPhone 6 Plus. Availability, I'm assuming worldwide. Looks like pre-order is going to be this coming Friday. So that'll be the 12th, I believe, and then in stores on the 17th, 1 week later. Prices vary all over the place, but now there's a 128 version mark that has not been available before with the 6 Plus. I think it comes with a new pair of trousers that have super wide pockets that are really, really deep. So you might have to order those in different colors, maybe khaki or navy blue or something when you get those new pants to hold the 6 Plus. Since seeing them side by side, it is certainly what they're calling phablets. But they may cut into some of the in the computers. You can do a lot of stuff on mobile phones now. They're super fast and take good pictures and good videos. So I'm pretty excited. So Mark, I think on Friday you're probably going to go ahead and place your order midnight Eastern Standard. You'll be up bright and early there in the UK to place your order, right?
Anything that has a bigger screen, he said, having pressed his mute button, as I get older, is nothing but a good thing. Now, in fact, with my iPhone the other day, I was somewhere quite interesting, and I was going to take a picture, and I got the camera out, and I went and I pressed the button, and it came up and said, phone memory full. And I've only got a 32 gig, and I never thought I would fill 32 gig. So maybe the 64 or even the 128 is the thing to do, especially if you're taking 240 frames per second video. That is going to be something to see. So we'll find out, and no doubt we'll have one to share with everybody, either here or more likely in the US studio in the next few weeks.
You know, Mark, real quick, I want to jump in real quick. You know, one thing I did not see that I have seen some cell phone manufacturers do, and this does relate to what we do in video every day, is, let's see here if I can find my phone. Find my phone. How many people do you see take video with it in landscape mode, with it up vertically like this? Does that just, for some reason, you know, and I know this is not a complete Vance complain day, but you know, if you see, I don't know if they do it on the BBC or not, but you know, you see these videos and they're really tall and really skinny, and then they blur and fuzz out the sides. So what I want, and there are some cameras that do this. Some cell phones that do this. If you start taking video on some of the phones, it actually tells you to turn it sideways, and you want to just have something that just kind of just smacks somebody upside the head and says your television or your viewing device looks like a rectangle that sits like this on the wall, not like this. But you know, that's just kind of a public service. I'm going to do a public service announcement advert that says on all videos, please make sure you hold your phone in a horizontal fashion and take the video that way, not this way, so you don't have those gigantic, stupid black bars on the left and right. So back to you, Mark.
I'm with you. In fact, I get annoyed when certain members of the family take photographs that way, because they then want it printed in a nice wide version, and I just say, how? You know, I say, are your eyes this way up, or are your eyes this way as opposed to that way? But they don't get it. I mean, you should just be able to. It should just either it should come out and thump you on the side of the head, or it should just take it the right way. I'm with you. I'm with you. So that ends this week's public service broadcast by Studio Tech TV. Okay. All right. Now let's go on to our last part of the show, and that is on the Blackmagic Studio camera, and it's still sitting here in the studio. And if we switch to camera 3. Peter, you can see it. There we are. It might even get into. Oh, I think this camera is on manual focus. So it just shows we didn't check the system before we. There we go. Right, there we go. So here's the. I did move it actually. To be fair, here's the Blackmagic Design Studio camera. We have shown it before. It has a nice large screen on the back and buttons. We've got the cover, the sort of the sun visor on it. I'm not going to go through all the controls. We've talked about it before, but what we have now done is a couple of things. Let's just let it up. There we go. Looks a bit Dalek-like from here, doesn't it? So you can see we've now got two SDI cables plugged into the side. You can see the great colours that we choose in the studio here. SDI cables should never be black. There should always be a bright colour, we think, here. Anyway, there's two connections. We've got SDI in and SDI out. So SDI out is obvious, but why has it got SDI in? Well, for a couple of reasons. One is that if you have an SDI in and you press the program button, you can actually see whatever is on program, or in this case, it's not on program. It's just Vance. So. This means that the camera operator can actually see, they can see either what is, shooting, or he can see what's on program. So that's a nice little touch. But it does something else. Because you're sending it basically a digital feed, it can send various bits of data to the camera, and that's what the Blackmagic ATEM control software uses to do various things. So I am now just showing on the laptop here the software. It doesn't quite fit in the screen on this old MacBook, so it's not the software that's a problem. It's just that this screen is slightly cropping it on the sides. But you can see that I've got camera 4 selected, but this camera is actually set up to be camera 5. And if I was to select camera 5 now, if we go to camera 3, Peter, just so that people can actually look at it, and then if I now in the software select camera 5, you'll see that the tally light comes on. So that's an example of data being sent to the camera, and if I now go back to camera 4, the tally light turns off. And there is also a tally light in the back at the top there. So that's another little interesting thing. The gotcha on this, if you're ever playing with this particular camera, is that you have to tell the camera which camera it is, and that's actually in this last setting, which is sort of studio settings. And you can see here we've got camera number. It's set up as camera 5, so it's camera 5 here, and it's camera 5 in the control software. So if we now switch to the output of this camera, which is I think on camera 4, you can see there that there's a beautiful shot of one of my favorite mugs, but it's not in focus. Now if we switch back to me for a second, and I'll just talk about before I go to the control software in a second. So you can now control from the software some of the functions of the camera, and one of those is, believe it or not, is focus. So if we look at the ATEM software control panel here, obviously we've got the main switching, we've got the media, we've got the audio tabs, but under this camera, oh, thank you, Peter. Under this the camera settings, you can see there are wrong one. So we're set here on camera 5. You can go to camera 4, camera 3, but when we go to camera 5, you can see that it says that it is on air, and these are various options that you have for for changing the lift, the gamma, the gain, etc. You can adjust here. You can adjust the this is the gain. You've got shutter speed over on the left hand side. So there's a whole lot of options that you have. This is the main sort of I'm using 3 fingers instead of 2 fingers. This is the main control panel. So you're going camera 1, camera 2, camera 3, camera 4. If I scroll over, you can see camera 5. And one of these buttons down here is sort of the autofocus button. So if we now switch to the camera shot and I press on the autofocus button on the software, it has focused the camera, and you can now see that the camera is in focus. So that's a nice neat touch. Back to the control software, and let's have a look at some other things. So we've got the gain, is up at 18 dB. This lens we've got is I think it's a 3.5 f-stop, and it's sort of okay in this light, but I've still had to wind the gain up. But if I turn it down to let's go to say to 12. Let's have a look at the picture, and I'll just go through the gain so you can see the various gain settings. So that's 0 gain, that's plus 18. Plus 12 is quite good. And back to the control software, and if I now hit this button here, which goes back to this sort of overall screen, we can do things like change the saturation, the contrast, the hue. You've got really full control, stuff that I really am not an expert in at all. But what we often use saturation for is taking a picture and turning it into a black and white picture. So again, if we switch to the camera and I just move the saturation down, you can see that has not. There was a lot of color in it. Well, here's a little bit of a red. There's a red USB dongle at the top there, and if I now take the saturation back up, you can see the the color coming back into the shot. So this the software, again back on the software control panel, is is pretty interesting. Would you want to balance all the cameras from this? Yeah, you could. I think it'd be something you'd probably do more in pre-show, in setup rather than during the show. But having, we just had the problem with the camera, a few seconds ago when we started this segment, we'd moved the camera and hadn't refocused. This means that if you were the the operator another task that they would have to do, but you can run multiple versions of this software if you have multiple people. You can go and you can change things. So I don't think I'm going to show many more of the options, but that really does give you an idea, and it's a very clever way of doing it using that program out feed. So obviously it's sending out data with a camera number that you set on the camera, and I think it's actually pretty neat.
Great if the camera's remote. If you're in a theatre and you had a camera mounted up in the roof, up in the lights, or back taking an overall picture, just that remote control, so going to it.
Yeah. So, Bance, I know that's the first time you've seen that. We haven't had a chance to talk about it, but what do you think?
Oh, I think that's going to offer some good control over that camera. I don't know if that's going to be in a lot of studios. It may be. I think it's a great. It's embarking a new path in camera design right from the beginning. Large rear display, a lot of control, remote control, and accessibility, multiple lens ability. So, I like a lot of the things that camera does. I like the size of it. Portability may be a little bit of an issue, but how many firmware updates has a camera gotten since we saw it released? Mark, do you know? Got a few changes and upgrades, and the software is similar, but I believe they've done some few upgrades on that as well, right?
Yeah, they have. There was a major release about a month ago. I think just as we got it with all this camera control unit CCU software in for the the ATEM software, and it is they really are doing some very clever things. I think the camera itself. What do I think of the camera itself? I like a lot of things about it, but I think I'm waiting for some software updates. And if we look at the camera, if we go to camera 3 again, Peter. If I turn around and if I am and if I turn off the menu display here, so if I'm the camera operator, there is no data on here. If I press the iris control to do an auto iris, nowhere is it coming up and telling me what the iris is. Nowhere is it telling me what the shutter speed is. Nowhere is, if I've got, focus, nowhere is it telling me that I'm focused at 2 meters or 3 meters. So if you want to do
does it do that with the menu overlay, Mark? I know that's in the way of the screenshot, but I'm just curious if it does those things right there. Okay, now if you hit the iris, what happens?
Yeah, only if we, but no, there is no. It does if you change the gain, shutter speed. It shows here. But it doesn't have, not that I have found, any settings at all that tell you what the aperture is or what the focal length is.
I see.
So and I think there should be an option to actually, display this data on the screen. If you're used to even a cheap handycam of some sort, you're used to seeing data on the screen. The more you use a camera in manual mode, the more data you want to be able to see. Now, having said that, at this price point, it is at this. People get annoyed when I say price point. At this price, it is an amazing thing. And I can see that. In a lot of schools or colleges or simple setup, even in studios like this, if you had camera operators, that big screen would be good. But then you have to put it onto a nice movable dolly, and you're talking thousands for that. So are you, by saving a few thousand on the camera, does that make sense? And the other thing that I think on the camera, so going back to the camera, that this screen is great, but there we are. This camera is great, but this screen is fixed, so you can't adjust it. So if you had the camera up high, you can't tilt the screen down, or if you had the camera down low, you can't tilt it up. Now, again, what do you expect at this price? For this price, what it does is pretty amazing. So I do think that displaying more information on the screen would be good. I mean, you could even think a little bit out of the box. Could you? I don't know whether you can support it in the SDI data stream, but could you actually have a chat? Could you actually send a message saying, operator 3, about to do this? Now, there has got support on the side, I think, for talkback. So you could argue that it's not going to be much of a gain, but there's lots of things that could be done. It's interesting. Now, I think Stephen is trying to show us something. So if we switch his audio back on, and Stephen, this is looks like the Blackmagic Pocket camera.
Yes, this is the Pocket Cinema camera, which I have just received as part of the special offer that took about 2 months to deliver because they couldn't make any fast enough. But I was just pointing out that they've been gradually adding this interface at the bottom to the cameras. I don't know if it's on the studio camera yet. If you press the up and down button, it may or may not display it. But they've added it to all of the others. The Blackmagic camera got it in about a week or 2 weeks ago. And it shows a histogram and audio meters and recording time. So I would presume that that will be added to the camera fairly soon, because it went to the production 4K camera first, then it got released to the other cameras, and if it's not there already, then I suspect that it will be soon on the studio camera. But they're rolling out firmware sort of every week now for the cameras, and they've said that they are just going to release it feature by feature, camera by camera, really frequently, rather than waiting ages for a load of sort of big updates. So there's new releases sort of every day.
Yeah, I think we're used to seeing that in Blackmagic. I mean, they get the hardware right and then release that, and then the software does tend to catch up a little bit. So hopefully they can, a lot of this data must be in the camera. So displaying it hopefully won't be too much of a problem. And being able to turn it on and off. Sometimes you've got an operator who just you're saying just point at the thing. They don't need the information. Being able to have some sort of remote control, or as I think it was Chris Watts, Watts says, for you need a remote control of zoom and focus. That might take a little bit more, but again, we have to consider how much this camera is. And let me just check on the latest price for it, because it is a very cheap, reasonable, whatever you want to call it, price. Here we go. Pocket Cinema Studio camera, $1,995. So there you are. So that's probably £1,300 plus taxes, etc. That is without a lens. So micro 4/3 lens. Says it has talkback and tally, and yeah, I mean that's a great picture, but that's a very expensive lens they've got on it. So then you've got a $2,000 camera and probably a $20,000 or $30,000 lens on it in that case. And I'm not sure. And then you've got rail system. Are people really going to use it like that? Maybe some will. Maybe for training and things like that, it'll be a good thing to do. But you've got to. In this picture, you've got an expensive lens, you've got an expensive dolly that it's set on. You have got remote control of the lenses there. I'll have to check and see whether that's actually supported, or I think that's actually straight into the lens. I think the lens control there is not by the camera, is actually straight onto the lens. So it is it is their first sort of studio camera release, and I think as Stephen has said, we're probably going to see more. But for the one man band, or the small band where you don't have camera operators, it probably isn't the best. Vance, I mean, you would, I guess you're very happy with your things like XA25s, etc., and there'd be no advantage in your setup for something like this.
Well, I mean, I guess you could argue that for the $2,000 that it's a good investment, but you're right. The lens. Someone's asking in the chat room, how many lenses do you have for that camera? And I think that's just the test model, I believe, and maybe not a whole lot of options. And you could probably build that camera to be very, very expensive, or keep it kind of inexpensive, but it certainly wouldn't look like the photos that they showed there on the website. But the XA25, the XA10, even the cameras that you guys are using there and have now for what, Mark, coming up on 2 years, maybe
3 years.
A little more.
3
the
years,
cameras
yeah.
You've got there, 3 years, right? 3 years, right? You don't have to get the super high end stuff unless you are having a proper studio setup, which we do have viewers that have proper studios, and they may want to come down to multiple or overhead cameras or different cameras or these set up to replace some older studio cameras. So I think that would work. So we get kind of accused of going way high up in price and product offerings, and then when we talk about XA10s, then other folks, may say something to us about, oh, that's just a toy. But I think the end game here, Mark, is that you want to get high quality, high definition content out to your viewers, and whatever fits your budget and your abilities in your studio, then go out and buy it. That's what I'd say.
And I think that is very good advice. I mean, for a studio camera, if you want people standing behind it, at the price, it is difficult to beat. And we're probably all being I'm perhaps being unfair comparing it to a camera that is, I don't know, probably 10 times its price, or 15 times its price, or 20 times its price. So I think I think we are going to see a lot of them about, and I'm sure they are selling lots of them. I know several people have said that they've actually seen them in use at event coverage with camera operators. So I think we'll hopefully see some of the software upgrades, which will fix a lot of the little niggles I have, and people will create great video with them. Right. So that's it. We've only just over the hour, and 5 hour and 10 minutes. So that's not bad for us. We've done very well to fit everything in. So I'm going to wish everybody a good day, and hand it over to Vance to wrap things up. And I look forward to seeing you next week. So Vance, you can close it down.
Exactly, Mark. So you said earlier to please follow us. At Vance Willis is me on Twitter, and Mark is at TTFN TV on Twitter. We get some comments, some notes, some direct messages, etc. Throughout the week, and also some product announcements. So please do that. Continue to send us your setups, either by still photography or video. We'll take any or all of those as well. We'd like to share those. We've done a number of those in the last few weeks and really enjoy doing that. Please subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, which is Studio Tech TV. Our website is studiotech.tv. Join us in the chat room each week if you can. On Tuesdays, we're live 2 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. UK, and 2000 CET. So as Mark said, until next week, we will see you guys here again very soon. Have a great day.